Welcome everyone to another episode of Notes from the Aleph. An Aleph is a high point from which all things are visible, and from our vantage point, we'll be looking at tabletop role-playing games, their design, and the theory behind those design. Around here, our motto is to be fair, build up, and have fun. I'm your host, Griffin, joined by our editor, Theta, our local designer, Norman Rafferty, and our good friend and GMs, RedRabbit, and Lesson Learned. When it comes to tabletop role-playing games, I have 15 years of experience running, playing, and frequently fixing problematic rules at the table, pronouns he, him, they, them. Lessons, why don't you go next?
Lessons Learned here on YouTube and Lessons Learned 1 on Twitch, which is here actually. And I go by he, him, published author of an Amazon with Night and Stars. And I run a weekly Sunday game for the wonderful people here at Raptor's channel, Into the Wild Coast, a Greyhawk 5th edition game.
All right, Red.
Okay, I'm RedRabbit, also he, him, and I'm also running a game for the Raktus channel on Wednesdays. We're doing Ironclaw, the 2nd edition, and I'm a collector and lover of tabletop role-playing games, and I consider myself a student of game design and of narrative design.
And last but not least, Rafferty.
Hello world, I'm Norman Rafferty, he, him. I work for Sanguine Games.
Hey, there you go. That's nice and simple. So, greetings, citizens. Have you done your duty and reported mutant communists today? If you haven't, you should report yourself to authorities immediately to fill your quota. Failing to meet your quota is grounds for immediate execution. So now, stay and listen to our mandatory podcast on Paranoia, the RPG, and where it came from. So I think we briefly started touching upon it last time. So Rafferty, why don't you go ahead and tell us, so where did it come from? Who came up with this crazy idea that you should be friend to the computer, who you should be a friend to?
Well, Greg Kostikin is a longtime game designer. He's written some great essays, such as "I Have No Words and I Must Design," which has been through a couple iterations, and I recommend everyone read it. And I haven't seen any authorities that says where this comes from, but the idea was, I remember we used to play, like, some people would be in what I'll call toxic Dungeons and Dragons game, where, if you read some of the older stories, you'll hear about inter-party betrayals, like, I'm evil, but they're good. We don't get along, even though we're in the same party. You could see cartoons that have been drawn by WotC of, like, Tomb of Horrors, where the evil character betrays everybody and gets killed, that sort of thing. And of course, our favorite, the cartoon, where Eric has to be, the Cavalier has to be shown, like, constantly, being told how wrong and stupid he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I really suspect that growing out of that was, what if we made a game that was specifically designed to be toxic, that it would have all these terrible traps that you couldn't possibly survive, and and the players were also, like, on edge trying to kill each other, but they couldn't just do it outright. They'd have reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually they came up with the idea, what if we drew from the works of, like, Stanislaw Lem or a little Illuminatus trilogy and made, a kind of THX 1138 subterranean society where you're all commie mutants, and you all have some secret mutation you can't rely on. You're all from some secret society that can't help you. You're going to be sent on a suicide mission, but it's okay because it's the future, so we give you clones. So we expect you to die 6 times. And out of this came the game Paranoia. And it came out at the right time because it was the early 80s. People were looking for alternatives to Dungeons and Dragons and Traveller. It was a humorous game that's genuinely funny because some of the moments in it are hysterical. And they managed to luck out and get the late, great Jim Holloway to illustrate it. Because I will maintain that there are many editions of Paranoia, but none of them are as good as the ones illustrated by Jim Holloway. Because he got it from day one. And there's all those pictures of surprise people, exploding people, robots, that kind of stuff. And Paranoia was the most successful game to come out of West End Studios, although I shouldn't say that because they also made the Star Wars game, which I'm sure was more successful, and they made the Ghostbusters game, which I'm also sure was pretty successful. Paranoia always had the problem that it's only fun in small doses because you can only play a game where everyone's going to kill each other every so often. You can't campaign it like Dungeons and Dragons. It's too mentally exhausting.
Eventually, there's so many details that you can't really avoid them. Yeah, it would be difficult.
Yeah. You can't level. In fact, the best way to play Paranoia is, ironically, you need to play it with a bunch of strangers. It was an excellent convention game, and I imagine it's pretty good streamed. because if you play a bunch of strangers, you don't know who to trust. And you already have that, and you also feel empowered to be really cruel to other people. And also I gotta say that even though it was humorous, some of the adventures are hilarious, some of them not so much, because the ones that emphasize ironic detachment and dystopia are hilarious, but some of them put in pop culture references that have aged incredibly badly.
There you go. They're critical flaw right there.
Yeah. Or of weird set pieces. Like there's one Paranoia adventure that makes fun of John Byrne's Next Men. And I'm just going to sit here like, none of you know what I'm talking.
No,
I think I could know, but I don't.
Right. And so like this would be a joke that would show up in the game and it's funny to know. So it's been through many editions. I don't even know what edition they're on now.
I remember,
I think they're on 8th, actually.
Paranoia XP. That was the version I played.
Paranoia XP was the last one to have Holloway artwork in.
Yeah.
And that was doing and that of course was doing XP jokes already in 2005 or whatever. It was already dated. Yeah. So that's the last one with the Holloway artwork in it. The newer ones, they have somebody else. No offense to them, but they're not Holloway.
So I guess while you're figuring out like editions, I suppose. So the thing that like interests me the most about Paranoia is because there's like two different interesting facets that a lot of games don't do. It's adversarial because you're clearly trying to implicate the rest of your party while also doing your mission. You're not really friends there, which is why you say it's great to play with strangers. You'll feel perfectly fine throwing them in jail and having them executed, right? And the other side is that there's not a lot that have the goal that you're really just there to see how fun it is to die or lose. The only other game that comes to mind right now that like gets that same sort of feeling would be Wicked Ones, which we did, where it encouraged you to get hurt and then go crazy because that was fun to do. So there's not a lot of other games out there that just say, yeah, let loose, do whatever you want, it's fine.
Well, there is a game that encourages you to be a horrible, horrible person. It's called Dungeons and Dragons. And I know people go, oh, I mean, D&D 4th edition said, don't be evil. People were so mad at this that D&D 5 said, okay, you guys can be evil.
Yeah. Yeah, but the Paranoia works if you have a little bit of buying. I think is critical, because if you come from something like Dungeons and Dragons, where especially modern editions, we're not supposed to die, you're not supposed to do all those things. You say, this is a game you're going to die. People are like, I don't know about that, Instead, but if you got the right group, whether strangers or longtime friends, and especially if you pitch it for one session, right? Be the game that you play between your long epic campaigns of whatever, and it's like, no, this night we're just going to have fun, have some beers or whatever, and pretzels, and you have the right buying, it can be absolutely hilarious, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, like that's why I said toxic earlier, because Paranoia is above board. You tell everybody this is going to be horrible and you're going to get killed. Like that's why I'm mad at D&D for putting evil back in there, because everyone says, well, if you can do it, but you have to be really sensitive and controlled and have big, like talk to people in much better detail than the book ever tells you to do. And you can have I'm always fond of saying, like, there's no bad games. There's just games that have trouble getting players to show up. If someone showed up at your D&D game and it was toxic or they didn't have fun, they just stop showing up and they make a polite reason to drop out of it. And that's why I was saying, like I really think that Paranoia, like the genius of it was they just said, okay, what could we do? They took a lot of things that are terrible game theories, like evil parties are a terrible idea. What if you were all evil? Or the other thing that's a huge deal, random incompetence. If you look back at a lot of old school games, you started off with the shittiest rolls ever. Like you might have a move silently of 35%. Or one of my favorites, climb walls starts at 60%, but you have to roll 3 times, once in the beginning, once in the middle, and once at the end. The failure point on that goes way up, guys. So in the tutorials, people are like, make a spot trap roll. Well, I failed. You are killed by a trap you didn't see. and like it was just random, incompetent death. How can we make that fun? And the answer was, well, we'll give you 6 clones, and we'll tell you in advance we expect all of you to get killed, and we'll give you a vested interest in killing other party members. And if you don't do it fast enough, the computer, all-seeing, will kill you.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of incentives in play to like let people lower their guard, not worry about what they're losing, and just kind of have fun with the experience. And I think that sort of experience combines to create a character that I love to play, which is the loser, the guy who is going to lose, who is going to die. And we just have fun with the dramatic irony of knowing, yes, he's playing into all of these tropes and it's going to happen, but the character sure doesn't know when. And I think that's maybe part of the fun of Paranoia. You know more than your character does. You know they're going to die, and now it's just a matter of, as being player and audience, to see how does it happen. Am I entirely off base with that?
No, I mean, also it leans a lot into the emergence as well. Like I was saying in an early episode, it's like you can say you will die, but the game gives you the tools to say you can die in so many ways, including and mostly at the hands of other players, right? Because killing each other at combat is kind of hard, but if you lead them into a trap, that's the ideal way. But then usually, like I said, my favorite Paranoia example was I lured this character to their deaths, and then I successfully killed them. And when the pot that was bringing the clone landed on my character, he killed me. So, yeah, I couldn't have predicted that, you know. So it's like, oh, you know, pot landed on me, I died. Yeah.
When I talk about the genius of Paranoia, it's like there are like little jokes. Like one version of Paranoia, they'll give you the cone rifle, which is a rocket launcher, and it can have different kinds of rounds. Well, one of the rounds in the cone rifle is the nuclear round, which has a danger space of 3,000 meters. That everything within 3,000 meters takes lethal damage.
What's the range increment on that?
The max range of the cone rifle is 2,000 meters.
Yes, it's a rifle. So yeah.
Right. Well, even even then, it's like those subtle jokes. And I remember that then one mission, one of our players has a cone rifle, and when he was using it, I discovered, well, wait a minute. The first round you fired was armor piercing, and the next round was incendiary. Did they mix your load and give you one of every round? Is one of those rounds a nuclear round? Should you be allowed to use this? He said, you're trying to take my cone rifle away from me? No. That's where the emergence comes in. Like, also, this is where I'll take the opposite tack, where, like, one of the things that does annoy me with Paranoia is to say, knowing the rules is treason. And, and like, let's pretend we don't know anything, citizen. And like that, I don't find as funny. Like really what I live for is the dawning moment of comprehension. Like that's the kind of joke I like that sneaks up on you of, wow, we are really screwed, aren't we? But that's what makes me laugh, and that's what I enjoy. And I think that's where Paranoia started to go wrong, where if everything that's happening to you is incomprehensible, then it's not funny. Like it's got to be, the jokes we just described of, yeah, of course his corpse fell on you because he was broken from explode. Of course that would happen. Right. If it's just bizarre stuff like you're attacked by Smokey the Bear, there's one you get attacked by Darth Vader. It's like these are just LOL randoms and don't make as much sense. It's like
right. It's the same as like early 2000 LOL so random moments. It's like they're trying to like copy off of other things which seemed like they were random but were highly constructed, and just went, well, if we just say anything, I guess it's funny. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work here.
Yeah, there's great pictures in the book of the guy who's like in a shootout in the fuel refinery. So he's just pointing at the giant flammable tank behind him. And he's got a gun. He's just smiling at everybody. Go on, shoot. Go on, piss me off. It's those moments. Or I think there's another adventure we were on where we're in the epoxy factory and we get in a shootout in one area and a chemical leaks all over the floor. And that's when somebody points out, epoxy is two different chemicals that combine. So the floor is all covered in chemical alpha. Maybe we shouldn't shoot the tanks in the beta plant. And sure enough, when those explode, that makes the super glue that freezes things in place, and it's like it's that moment of wow, we are screwed, aren't
Yeah, very much.
It's a little bit of constructed emergence because you have to create the scenario in the first place for that to happen. This joke doesn't just appear out of thin air,
Well,
but it still is something that has to happen during play.
you're all given a secret goal. Like you're all supposed to be a secret goal of do something. Like in one of the demos, it's your goal is to replace the shower head of the block commander with you're supposed to put like paint in it. So when he like runs it, he'll be painted green. Hysterical. And someone else in the party has the goal, stop them from replacing the shower head. And it's like neither of you know who each other are.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's completely pointless to the flow of the adventure. But the fact is that you've got that in your mind. Meanwhile, we're doing all this carnage over here. It's that absurdity that once again makes it really good for short instances. And like I recommend people playing it because I think it like gives you a greater feel for especially the powerlessness. Or like this is what I've been complaining about, which is when we do emergence as performative. Paranoia, the entire game is basically performative. You are basically doomed. So the question is, what kind of hysterical stuff can you get into that's entertaining until you get there? It's a precursor to all this stuff like Critical Role.
Yeah, and I think that's why they like start with don't know the rules, because like they understand it, but maybe didn't understand how to explain that.
Well, they don't want somebody coming up and saying, I just shoot at him, I have a 28% chance, because like there's this old impression of role play, don't role play. The idea that if you know what's going on, you can't be any fun, which of course I'm always, that's one thing I respect about Matt Mercer, because he doesn't believe that either. You can know the rule, knowing how this stuff's supposed to work can actually make you enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it also, I think it's one of the things that works very well in comedy because, gotta know how the punchline works, right? If you don't you can't do the setup if you don't know how, jokes kind of work unless you're the kind of person who's naturally funny, a savant of comedy.
It can't all be me.
It's the old Mel Brooks joke of tragedy is when you trip and fall down. Comedy is when you walk into an open manhole and die. You're laughing. What's wrong with you?
Oh, I'm just messed up.
Because they're not supposed to.
Comedy, so I get it.
Because they're not supposed to. That's why.
Well, it's oh, go ahead.
Also, I think it's one of those games that actually gives you permission, like you said earlier, to do all the things that you're not supposed to do. And because it is a comedy kind of game, it's like, yes, the comedy kind of cushions it. Where in another situation, you may have hurt feelings because you backstabbed my favorite rogue, and I've been, with this rogue for 5 years, and now it's dead, and I can't revive him. But here's like, okay, I got another clone. That was part of the joke, and not only that, I can do it to you as well. Consequence free or nearly consequence free.
Paranoia adventure where I we had forms to fill out, and I wrote something. I won't repeat it, but I wrote something incredibly terrible in the sections of the form, and we're playing the game for another 20 minutes, and then my character gets killed, and so clone number 2 shows up and say, "Hi guys, I'm clone number 2." Bang. Well, Rafferty, please report to the Fuzzy Bubble Testing Center. Oh, okay, bye guys. My character walks off. Hi guys, I'm clone number 3. What's going on? Never told anybody else what happened to clone number 2. and like we're laughing at that because that was hilarious. Because I thought it was hysterical because I deliberately wrote something treasonous in there. Like, boom, something happened. We don't know what it is. It's
I like that.
Yeah, well, it's but it also gets into what we're talking about old school games like not D&D, but stuff like RuneQuest and Rolemaster. This is a thing that keeps showing up as a terrible idea. Terrible idea. Everyone stop doing this. Critical fumbles. Like everybody loves to tell the story of, and then he rolled a 1 and everything blew up and died, or something. The one always happens to someone else in these stories. On the one hand, they sound hysterical because someone rolled really terrible and something like a cascade horrible happened to them. But the problem is that rolling a 1 on a d20 is a 1 in 20 chance. So after you've made 20 roll, that comes up 1 every 20 times, which means it comes up frightfully often if you do the math on it. Like those kinds of fumbles have to be incredibly rare or your game is incredibly silly. And in Paranoia, your game is incredibly silly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the extremes are part of the fun.
Well, the idea that, you fire, when you fire the laser and shoot off your own foot, that's hilarious because you're incompetent. It was also like that's also the idea in Paranoia. That's how they game balanced it, which is you want to do stuff, but you're incredibly incompetent at it. And the game, if you fail, you could get killed. So you're constantly looking for opportunities in the game to get away with shit that you're not supposed to get away with. And you're not doing the thing that people do in modern games that just brute force it. Like what we're always complaining about in like Power by the Apocalypse or D&D. It's like, I just charm him. Now I have to do whatever I say for an hour. It's like, you realize this still make him mad. Yeah, but that's later. And that's usually where like that's not fun because it's like they got their way, did whatever they wanted, and often that doesn't come off as very fun. Whereas in Paranoia, because everyone is deliberately this incompetent, like your odds of making that 20% roll are like, yeah, like you feel like you got away with something. And if you didn't, the failure is hysterical. So once again, it's that very uncanny balance. But there are also many editions of Paranoia out there. Like, Jesus Christ, does anybody know what edition we're on? Because Mongoose likes to pretend previous editions don't exist.
I was thinking it was 8th, but I thought you were doing the research there for a bit. Let's go find out.
Go ahead.
I was poking around on Drive-Thru RPG because I had been recommended this game by you guys before, and I thought I saved it, but I didn't. I'm finding this thing called Service Pack 1 that looks like it has the same art from Paranoia XP, but I can't really find XP.
Yeah, it's an expansion.
Yeah,
is that what it is?
They might have stopped selling XP because they might have lost the license to Jim Holloway's artwork. Because the newer editions of it don't include Jim Holloway's artwork. There were at least 3 editions under West End.
I got them all right here if you want to hear them out. There's first edition, there's second edition, Metaplot in the second edition, 5th edition, the unreleased West End Games 3rd edition, Paranoia XP, 25th Anniversary edition, and Red Clearance edition.
Red Clearance, I think, is the current one. Yeah, I think it was weird. They went 1, 2, and there's a 5th, but there's no 4th.
That's pretty funny.
2014.
Yeah, for reasons not entirely clear. And 1 and 2 have Holloway artwork in them. And also Paranoia 2nd edition is the best advertising campaign that I've ever seen, where they say Paranoia 1st edition was the best role-playing game and is perfect in every way. Paranoia 2nd edition is even more perfect.
Yes.
And they had they also have Acute Paranoia, which is a supplement, and Acute Paranoia, new rules to ignore. Like right there in the cover. And it really, the phrase I believe is taking the piss, because it really, there are lots of comedy role-playing games. I don't think any of them have the purity of purpose and the knowing savagery of Paranoia. Because comedy games that just throw in a bunch of weird pop culture references and that kind of stuff will just come and go. Paranoia knows how terrible players are, and works with that.
Yeah, I think and that's one of the things, especially with comedy games and even horror games, that being simulationists can actually be against the grain. Like the infamous, I don't know if anybody's never heard about Toons, which is supposed to simulate being in a Warner Brothers cartoon.
Well, they've made attempts to put like Bugs Bunny into D&D, and Gary Gygax himself wrote an Alice in Wonderland in it.
Yeah, so it's like, if you try to emulate something outside of the RPG experience, that's what Paranoia actually takes the RPG experiences. This is fun, and this is fun when it happens. Mm-hmm. Let's make a game about that, about funny things that happen in games, not something that happens in a cartoon, with Mel Brooks as a voice or whatever, which, that's what makes it funny.
It is a reference back to its own originating genre rather than something that is pulling from other pop cultural notes.
Well, but he also uses the mechanics as well, are based on things that are game-like and game funny, as opposed to being like, well, I'm going to make a mechanic that's going to make you stretch your bones or skin like, your or something. And so, yeah.
Paranoia 1st edition is pretty incomprehensible, but later they settled on the same system that they use in the role-playing game Firefly. So there's that, or similar to Star Wars. Kostykian liked to design where you had attributes like moxie and strength and that kind of thing, and that was your base default. So if you have strength of 3, you have +3 to do anything strength related, and then skills were a bonus to that. So you'd have strength, and underneath that you'd have cascading of like brawling, climbing, jumping, and you have 3s in all of those. And if you level up in jumping, whatever, you're +2, +3. That shows up in Paranoia 2nd edition. Paranoia 1st edition is just a bunch of like bizarre crap because that's what the way games work. And Paranoia pretty much keeps that paradigm throughout. So it's an easy to understand paradigm. Like Fate does something like that, and Savage Worlds does something like that, and it's actually a very straightforward RPG system. It's not that hard to figure out. It's not until later that, because it's a dice plus adds to beat a target number, when the target numbers are just so ridiculous and the penalties for rolling fumbles are so ridiculous, that's how you're screwed.
So I think I got a question about execution. So we mentioned like secret goals. Everyone has their own plot and their own secret power and their own secret organization. So when it comes to playing it out of the table, like especially with a bunch of strangers where you don't even know how they're going to act. So how do you do a secret action then? You're at a convention, you got 5 people at the table, one of them's running the game, and you go, well, I want to replace Showerhead, and you just say it out loud. Or what's the process here? Because there's a lot of games where secret stuff happens.
Oh my god, I can't. I'm glad you guys think she was old. Okay, so there was this thing they used to do in gaming.
That's it.
Called passing notes. Where you
but you see, you've passed a note, and now everyone knows you passed a note.
Except inevitably in the game of Paranoia, someone will write a note that says nothing at all. They'll say this note is not relevant, or this note isn't, and they'll hand that to the GM. The GM will look at that, nod, and write at the bottom of it okay, and pass it back to them.
Yeah.
Because that inevitably happens in Paranoia. And someone said in the chat here, and then someone will knock it out of the air and eat the paper or steal the paper. That is actually frowned upon. I mean, you might as well just say, we'll just cheat on die roll. I'll just roll a die and say a game of
might as well make it a game of rugby or something.
That's what we used to do in the old schools. In the modern school, you would send a private message. You can text the DM. Or stuff like that, but that's how we used to do it. We used to pass notes. Or you would have the dramatic reveal. Like I remember even the game of Paranoia said the reason why area effect weapons are rare and difficult to use is because like when you have one, when you're sitting there with the flamethrower, what you want to do is you want to get in the edge of everyone else and then just wipe everyone out in a single hit. But Paranoia is where I get one of my favorite jokes that I repeat a lot, where I say, I believe I can speak without fear of contradiction. And you can say that because you killed everybody.
Yeah.
It's because no one here saw or was a witness to what it was that you did. There's also some, in Paranoia, technically the next clone has the same skills as you and has been briefed on what you're up to. But the last clone that showed up and fell into the food vat or whatever and got, reprocessed or whatever, doesn't necessarily know what happened in the last moments when that guy got killed. So there is some of that. But yeah, we used to pass notes to each other.
Yeah.
Right. And I asked because like a lot of systems don't have any sort of reference to what you should do when people are trying to be secret or do things behind the scene. And that's always like a thing that comes up, especially in more character driven RPGs where, say like Vampire, it's like, well, I want to start my secret plot. It's like, but I don't want everyone to know about it.
Yeah. Well, like hardcore games would use blue booking, which is Aaron Alston, the D&D Cyclopedia guy, described the idea that between sessions you would get one of those little blue exam books. I'm so old. And write in it what your characters were up to, for very intensive stuff. But yeah, I mean, basically, to just summarize all this, Paranoia is an introduction to performative play, where the outcome is pretty much determined. You are trying to do some crazy things before it runs out. It's a good introduction because it's so raw, because you can't lose. It's not got that. No, you can't. it's hard to do humor in a real game, because if someone shows up at your D&D game and they've written up their wonderful dragonborn with rippling thews, they want to be taken seriously. Like, you can't do this in Vampire. When someone shows up with Vampire, they build a character, they want to be taken incredibly seriously. It's my avatar. This is handsomer and more powerful than me. So because Paranoia starts everybody with low expectations and disarms them, and the rules work hand in hand with the kind of comedy that you're getting at, I don't know about newer editions, but they really should be like, have fun, express yourself, get killed in horrible ways. That's the real fun of it. And that's why, I'm recommending it to folks. The new version's probably fine. Like, I don't think Mongoose could screw it up that badly. And there isn't a lot to it. I do miss the old artwork, but any edition except for 5th edition is fine. 5th edition has too many rules in it. They got some people to turn it into a real game. You don't want people think what we just talked about, leveling up. You don't want people thinking about leveling up and getting better and having complicated powers. This is Paranoia. You want people thinking anything I do could backfire. I need to,
You want them in the moment.
You want them nervous about that. And that basically, because we're almost out of time here, that's how I would summarize it. I think everybody should play it once, and probably only once.
We should probably all play it once.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm game. When are we gonna do it?
We'll figure that out later.
Well, April 1st is coming up. Maybe we'll see what we can do. After Wicked
Nice.
ones,
That's
it's
a
going to be
wonderful
hard.
time
Because
right there.
I loved Wicked ones for different reasons.
Any sort of last notes you guys want to throw on top of that, or any questions you want to pop at Rafferty?
Just remember. Go ahead.
No, I was
Is
just
he-
gonna ask about the editions, but he basically just told us, right? Like anything before 5th edition.
Second edition was my favorite, and it's the one I played the most. Like I said, 5th edition is too complicated. XP is fine. The issues I have with XP are not related to the rules, so XP is pretty good. The ones after it, I don't really know because I haven't played those. I'm sure they're.
Yep, there is a lot of Paranoia content on Drive-Thru RPG, which makes it kind of tricky to find exactly what is like a source book and what is available. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna pick one of these up,
Mongoose,
definitely.
Yeah, Mongoose is not very good at that, at letting you know which edition is current.
Just roll the dice. Lessons, you had something?
Remember that the computer is always your friend.
Yep.
Always trust friend computer.
Friend computer. So, computer says that's all for today for Notes for the Aleph. We stream episodes bi-weekly Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Come and join us live at twitch.tv/Ractus. We also stream and record weekly tabletop games on the same channel. You can come join us when we start at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays and Wednesdays. Norm Rafferty here is a partner and writer of Sanguine Games. Check out sanguinegames.com, join the Reddit and Twitter, and look forward to all the upcoming projects like Book of Quarrels, and go see Rafferty over at MagFest, where you can go and ask him why he's not playing in your Paranoia game.
Or if you missed it.
Or if you missed it.
If you were there, I love you.
Don't forget to check out RedRabbit and book him for a game over on startplayinggames.com as RedRabbit. And don't forget to check out Lessons Learned channel, Lesson Learned 1 on Twitch and YouTube, and check out all of his wonderful projects and ongoing series, and catch him live, of course, as well. Friend Computer reminds you to be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and come see us all again. Till next time, everybody.